Hi again, this is Vincent Faney. I am the author of Zen and the Art of Resistance Training, a yogic and scientific approach to weight training. I was an athlete who has reached world-class levels of strength. If you look at my credentials, if you look at the clip here on YouTube, one of the clips talks about my credentials, the level of development that I had reached. I was in the best shape of my 40s, and so in an age bracket where most men, it's generally not believed that most men can be at world-class level. In fact, I've reached world-class levels of strength for any age. So it just goes to show you that as you get older, you can get better. I'm also pursuing a degree in bioengineering and studied extensively at exercise physiology, sports medicine a little bit, some anatomy physiology, kinesiology, obviously weightlifting, 40-some years experience, training, experimenting, researching, achieving levels of world-class performance, and also helping other people to achieve their dreams. Now, this is chapter 15 that I'll be discussing. Chapter 15 is titled Why Most People Doom Themselves to Failures. And here are the basic outlines of why most people will doom themselves to failure. There's some of the pitfalls. I want to just discuss what some of the pitfalls are. I'm going to just bring this right up. Some of the pitfalls that are common weightlifting are overtraining, undertraining, lack of intensity, improper form, poor exercise choices, lack of sleep, poor nutrition, improper ratios of needed nutrients, and improper use or a failure to properly utilize all the various modalities of training, an inability to properly move from one phase of training into the next phase that is correct for you. Huge. That is one of the most common. Overtraining is one of the most common, and also the ability to go from one phase of training. If I had to say which ones the two tops were, or three tops were, ill-defined goals, inability to properly move from one phase of training to the next that is correct for you, and overtraining. And surprisingly, a lot of people, there's people who undertrain. Every now and then I get a person who's afraid of overtraining and they don't really do enough. So we talk about chronic illness, unmanageable stress in your life. That's why I talk about in the earlier chapters dealing with biblical sins and etiquette and all sorts of value systems, belief systems. And when you have unmanageable stress in your life or underlying anxieties, it could just drag you down, bog you down. I've seen people come to the gym and they can't focus because they're, in the back burners of the mind, if not in the forefront of their mind, is always, the trouble with the wife or kids, trouble at work, the various things. People suffer from ill-defined goals. Gotta have very defined, clear, crystallized goals. I see so many people who have worked out and done the same things that I've done, and they'll make wonderful results because if you just pay attention to perfect mechanics of training and so forth, you're going to make great results. But if you don't use some of the mind-body stuff, if you don't really think about the various aspects that I discuss in the book, and everything to you is kind of ill-defined, it's going to slow you down. I see that they basically, the people that I have trained like me, you have two groups. One who don't do everything that they can, they just do the mechanics, and the other people who understand every aspect that I'm trying to communicate. And so the people who understand every aspect and do all things being equal, their progress is noticeably far superior. You got to worry about poor relations with others. Again, that brings the chronic stress. One thing I want to emphasize is that dreams. People say benching 1,000 is a dream. Why are you bothering dreaming? Well, my dream might be a dream, but dreams are the springboard to reality. And also Jerome Bruner, a famous cognitive psychologist, has found that intent always precedes the ability to do or master. So it's very important to think about that stuff. Anyways, that's why most people doom themselves to failure. And I want to discuss what some of the pitfalls are, and very important to discuss what some of the pitfalls. Well, we just discussed the pitfalls, but I want to discuss some of the self-defeating thoughts and behaviors. But one thing, as you know, I'm a fan of really good quotes and analogies and parables and so forth. Very powerful for getting some points across. Now, a quote from Mark Twain: "A powerful agent is the right word. Whenever we come upon one of those intensely right words, the resulting effect is physical as well as spiritual and electrically prompt." Now, I'm not just going to say right word, but also right thought, right belief system, a right sentence, a right thought, not just a word, but a right turn of phrase is the same. It's the same thing. Some of the self-defeating thoughts and behaviors I want to discuss with you that can doom people to failure is fear, anger, anxiety, self-consciousness, perfectionism, stubbornism, lack of motivation, over-competitiveness, having distractions, being distracted, lack of persistence. Now, fear is something that, can be your best friend. I don't say never, never feel fear. One of my martial arts teachers when I was young, he was a world-class judo player. In fact, he was a world champion, middleweight judo champion at one time, and also world-class taekwondo. And he's a grandmaster now, and he teaches a variety of martial arts. And I was ashamed of being afraid. I was afraid of being afraid, and he said that fear is actually necessary. So, as he says, you can be your best friend. It keeps you sharp, and you just don't want it to paralyze you. You don't want to be afraid of the weights to the point that it paralyzes you. You want to have just enough fear to get a little bit of your juice going. Get your arousal, be aroused, and so forth. And so you just basically want to use fear. Now, Cus D'Amato, who trained Muhammad Ali, I think he trained Muhammad Ali. He trained certainly Mike Tyson. He said fear could, you could use fear, turn fear into anger. He claims anger can keep you warm and steal your resolve. Now, he basically will say also that you don't want to let anger run away with you. Now, with fear, Jimmy Johnson says it really comes down to your philosophy. Do you want to play it safe and be good, or do you want to take a chance and be great? And another one is the bottom line: you can't be afraid to fail. Okay, my friend Neo says fear creates the condition that keeps people from succeeding. He also says fear makes you play it safe, play small. Okay, and some guy in baseball, he's unknown, says you can't steal second with your feet on first. All right, so all you can do is fear is not good when it gets out of there. Fear, you could use fear though, and some athletes know that over too much fear is bad. But they could, fear of failure is another stumbling block, and so people can't be afraid to fail, and you can't have runaway anger. I mean, anger can be bad if it's runaway anger. Okay, for instance, it's like it could eat you up. It's what Yoda says, the dark side of the Force. And although Gus said it's better to feel anger than fear, he believes that it needs to be controlled. Mark Jordan has said the same thing. Never let anger cloud your judgment or interfere with your performance. That's true in weightlifting. Lou Gehrig, a ball player who loses his head, can't keep his cool, is worse than no player at all. Now, anxiety is something that can overwhelm you. It's another killer. Learn to keep it under control. Preparation and action does a lot to help quell feelings of anxiety. Okay? And so, Jerry Rice, he talks about, a baseball player, says the absolute worst thing a receiver can do, I think baseball, football, is to worry about not catching the ball or getting hit. It's probably baseball. And that's how it is in lifting. You got a fear of the weight crushing you. You got a fear of not being able to lift the weight or do it. And so we get too fearful, and that could ruin your performance. So you got to control your emotions, or they'll control you. You can't have any doubt in your mind. You gotta know how your muscles know. If there is doubt in your mind, how can your muscles know what they're expected to do? Okay? A person who doubts himself is like a man who would enlist in the ranks of his enemies and bear arms against himself. Okay? So, and also an anxious mind cannot exist in a relaxed body. And when one is anxious, so is the other. The body's anxious. And one is at rest, so is the other. So one thing that I've learned in weightlifting, if you're anxious and you're tense, your body, you're not going to be able to move as quickly, as forcefully, with as much power, and your body becomes more fatigued. And the name of the game is conservation of energy. Okay, and you got to self-consciousness, I don't mean to not be aware of your thoughts or to be centered on your consciousness of self. But what I mean is to be overweening fear of embarrassing yourself. This type of self-consciousness is another killer performance and quality of life. And perfectionism, people who are obsessively perfectionistic often suffer from fear of failure. People are so critical of themselves and others that they often will fail to take appropriate actions. And this keeps them from performing less than perfect. And of course it keeps them from performing or living fully. Perfectionists will often be tempted to win at all costs, if they attempt at all. Okay? Now Nancy Lopez says successful competitors want to win. Head cases want to win at all cost. Alright? So, you got to be careful about that. And then there's stubbornness. People won't change their mind about training regardless of the evidence. I know so many people who have seen the progress that I've made and other people have made, and they'll go, and they'll stick to their tired old routine that doesn't bear them any fruit. Now, people who suffer from stubbornness often refuse to learn from failure. And they often refuse to admit to themselves that that they are wrong or make mistakes. Now, this means that they're crippled in the sense that they find it tough to keep an open mind or to change or improve. Now, an unknown has said, when you find yourself in a hole, first rule is to stop digging. Many people suffer from lack of motivation. It just shocks me how many people are just not motivated. Anthony Robbins says the reason for this is that the people who have the trouble getting motivated is because they have impotent goals. And I would agree. This is why your goals must be vivid. They must be powerful. Jim Ryan says motivation gets you going. Discipline keeps you going. Okay? Jimmy Connors, a former tennis player, he says, I thrive on emotions. The emotional energy allows me to raise my level. And I would talk about over-competitiveness. People are over-competitive and are not creative and will tend to view all negative results or experience as failure. This often freezes their performance. They learn how to become helpless. Distractions come in all forms, such as partying lifestyles, drug addictions, sexual promiscuity, food binges, and draining relationships. And there are many of these situations in life that have to be dealt with, so you're not distracted from your goals. And the training is needed to attain your goals and it's kept to a minimum. Okay? Lack of persistence is one of the biggest killers in achieving anything worth having. People can have intelligence, they can have talent, youth, appropriate goals, the best of strategies and game plans, and yet everything could end in failure. And if you lack the persistence and discipline to keep following through, persistence means never giving up. This does not mean not being flexible and having a healthy willingness not to change. As Winston Churchill was fond of saying, never, 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 never give up. Look to Lance Armstrong as the definitive example of persistence. Perhaps one day we'll look at the word persistence in a dictionary and see a picture of him or me by the word. I have my main success is despite many failures and doing everything the wrong way. I've trained every wrong possible training program in my 40-some years, and persistently I've been persistent enough to keep going forward and experimenting, and that's why I've been able to come up with one of the probably the most groundbreaking methods of working out ever. Now, Knute Rockne, famous football coach, has a famous saying, build your weakness until they become your strengths. And so, I want to talk about the 7 important characteristics for achieving success. Okay? 7 important characteristics. That is competitiveness. I like to use creativity. I think it's sometimes a better term, but competitive, this is good. Confidence, control, commitment, composure, courage, consistency. I call those the 7 C's for achieving success. And it should be competitive. You should be competitive in the sense that look at other people who are superior to you or performing superior right now and look at them as a mile marker and saying, if one man or woman has done it, so can I. Use them to get your juices going. Okay? Pat Riley says, every time your back is against the wall, there's only one person that can help you, and that is you. It comes from the inside. Mary Lou Retna says, each of us have a fire in our hearts for something, and is our goal in life to find it and keep it lit. And again, the confidence. You got to have confidence. Bruce Lee, Dan Gable, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Dr. Salk, and the people responsible for eradicating smallpox. They had the confidence, the certainty that they would be champions, a certainty that they would achieve their goals. So attitude is a choice. Think positive thoughts daily, believe in yourself. Do not let what you can't do interfere with what you can do, okay? Now, you got to know the value of controlling your thoughts, your emotions, and thereby controlling behavior. Mastering control allows you to operate under the most challenging situations. This means you have to be responsible for your life. Remember, in life you cannot always control what happens to you or around you, but you can always control how you respond to what happens to you or around you. Okay? So, I mean, even like Stan Musial, he says when a pitcher's throwing you a spitball, don't worry, don't complain, just hit the dry side like I do. And there's commitment. People who are committed to their goals are highly motivated and self-directed. This characteristic allows them to focus on the appropriate time and energy on the dreams and goals that they have set up for themselves. And Vince Lombardi, one of the greatest football coaches of all time, says the harder you work, the harder it is to surrender. Remember that. The harder you work, the harder it is to surrender. He also said once a man has made a commitment, he puts the greatest strength in the world behind him. And it's something we call heart power. Once a man has made this commitment, nothing will stop him short of success. Okay? And people who have to learn about composure are more apt to focus and deal with challenging situations. This is important to remember that the confused mind, this is important to remember that the confused mind will say no. This is because doubts cause intellectual confusion and can cause paralysis of a person's will. Olga Korbut, one of the greatest gymnasts of our time, she said this ability conquers oneself. It is no doubt the most precious of all things sports bestow upon us. And people who demonstrate courage are likely to demonstrate the willingness to take more risk. And when I mean risk, I do not mean a willingness to do unnecessary or dangerous stunts with no thought or plan. I mean they have the courage to go off to the path followed by the average person, and they strive to take the high road towards achieving their full potential. A great man can be as great as he wants to be, says Vince Lombardi. And Evander Holyfield says it's not the size of a man, but the size of his heart that matters. People who practice consistency are disciplined towards their training and performance, and it's not unusual for these people to be at their best when they're feeling pretty low. Joe DiMaggio, one of the best baseball players of all time, he liked to say, you ought to run the hardest when you feel the worst. Never let the other guy know you're down. And Hank Aaron, consistency is what counts. You have to do things over and over and over again. Now, we have a summary of a success formula. You have to ask the proper questions. Find out what your values and belief systems are. Find out if your values and belief systems are appropriate for a life that ensures your evolution in all categories. Set your goals. Make sure your goals have power-setting attitude of no limits and see them clearly. Make the appropriate use of pain and pleasure. Commit to making plans that will ensure your success. Commit to your goals by the use of massive and powerful action. Constantly evaluate your methods and be flexible if you're not satisfied with the results. Along the way, use all your faculties. Use your body, your intellect, your emotions, and your heart or spirit. Be here now. You know, in the section 9, when you read the book, you see I go into detail how to approach each and every point bulleted above. And I'd like to point out additional emphasis on a few other points that go along with the formula I just mentioned. Additional points for a success formula: follow your dreams. Remember about goal setting. Give yourself permission to win. Get the fire in the belly. Attitude is everything. Remember discipline, preparation, hard work, and persistence. And be here now. So, like I said, follow your dreams. Be your dream. Okay? Okay. Life is a collection of self-fulfilling prophecies. All right? The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. Eleanor Roosevelt. And so we got to learn about goal setting, and I talk about all these other points. So just remember, and we'll get the chapter. We'll get the chapter 16. I'll see you next in chapter 16. Oh, one thing before that, I want you to really basically. I do bring up some evidence, the resistance training inside mystical states, and you'll get more of that as you read the book. and learn to practice. You got to learn to practice what you're weak in as well. And remember that sometimes less is better. And what I mean is, you know, sometimes people try too hard and they'll underperform. So sometimes you just got to let yourself go, okay? Well, we'll see you next time. Bye.